I'm Jim Minow, Executive Director of the CureJM Foundation. I'm entering my, or well into, I guess is a better way to put it, my 7th year here at CureJM. And I'd like to take a moment to not only introduce our speakers for today, but also to introduce 3 special members of our board of directors who I don't think we have any more, but as I page through, if I see any more, I'll introduce you later. Those would include Christine Alderfer, who is the president of our board of directors, Karen Berman, who's been on the board now for I think almost a year and is also, along with Christine, the national chair of Walk Strong Across America. And our newest board member and chair of the Grandparents Council, Randy Putt. So thank you all for being with us today on this presentation. Our speakers today include Dr. Andrew Heaton, who is CureJM's Chief Scientific Officer. Andrew has been with the organization now, I think, entering his 5th year. He has a strong background in drug development and was brought on board really to help lead the effort that he's going to speak about a little bit later in terms of drugs and treatments that are either in clinical trials where we're awaiting results or about to go into clinical trials, hopefully here in 2022. And also Shannon Malloy. Shannon, of course, needs no introduction to anybody on this call. She is CureJM employee number 1, who has been with us from the very beginning as we sort of made our transition from being an all-volunteer organization to an organization that had some staff members. Shannon just is extraordinary in terms of her outreach to families and also serves as our director of development and chief fundraiser, and just about anything else you could mention that needs to be done at CureJM. You can call on Shannon to do it. With that, I'm going to just open up very quickly and talk a little bit about CureJM's mission, especially for those of you on the call who are newer. And our mission, as I think you all know, and I'd like to give great credit to our co-founder, Sherry Hume, for coming up with this mission some years ago when we were determining the best way to say what it is that we are all passionate about. And it is to find a cure and better treatments for juvenile myositis and to improve the lives of families affected by JM. Very simple, very straightforward. And as Andrew's going to talk a little bit later about our focus on better treatments, and I'll talk a little bit about our efforts to improve the families affected by JM. A little bit of history of who we are. We were founded in 2003 by parents and grandparents. I mentioned Sherry Hume, who was the author, if you will, of our mission statement. She, along with her husband Tom and a couple of grandparents, were the founders of CureJM in 2003. Since that time, we have funded over $19 million in research with hundreds of published manuscripts, and I think it's really quite fair to say that if there has been research that has been published in the last 20 years, that CureJM's name is associated with probably something like 80% of that research in terms of the funding that we have provided to the dozens and dozens of researchers across the United States and in the United Kingdom and Europe. We have funded 4 centers of excellence that focus on research and patient care. We've just approved funding of a 5th center of excellence on the West Coast. Stay tuned for an announcement of that here in the next 30 days. And I'm also very excited to talk a little bit today, later on in this program, about the CureJM Clinical Network. This is a new initiative of CureJM and our board of directors to expand quality care to all corners of the country where it may not exist at a level that is as high as we would like to see. We know around the country that we've got extraordinary docs who are working in pediatric rheumatology departments and striving to provide the best care that they can. And the goal of the CureJM Clinical Network is to support those pediatric rheumatology departments and those docs to yet improve quality of their care to a higher standard than they already have. Currently, we're funding $5 million in current multi-year grants. We've just finished a new grant cycle that has awarded, I think, almost $400,000 in new grants coming on board here in 2022 to be added to the grants that we already have in our funding cycle. We have about 3,000 families in the CureJM database. This represents a significant percentage of families who are managing JM within their family, but our goal is really to recruit and engage all families across the country, and the clinical care network and our ongoing outreach will help us achieve that objective. And finally, and you'll hear a little bit from Andrew about this relative to our upcoming medical symposium, but we're also focused on patients of all ages. We are acutely aware that many JM patients age out of pediatric rheumatology and have to move to the care of adult rheumatologists. Many of those adult rheumatologists are becoming more and more familiar with and capable of treating JM well. And one of the goals of a transition program is to continue to expand that adult care as well for patients who do not go into remission and may live the better part of their lives managing their JM. That's a bit of a real quick overview, and I'd like to turn it over now to Dr. Heaton, who's going to talk a little bit about the impact of our research. Andrew, over to you.
Thanks, Jim. My pleasure to speak to you all today. I think, as Jim said, I've been with the foundation for around about 5 years now. We've seen some tremendous outcomes in the last 10 or 15 years, but particularly in the last 5 years as we create some focus. I think, some of the highlights over the last few years, we organised and scheduled a listening session with the FDA. The idea behind this was to impress upon the FDA the difficulties that we have as a rare paediatric disease in bringing new treatments and new drugs through to the FDA for eventual approval. It was a very successful meeting. You will see that is actually captured on our website, and it's also linked back into the FDA. So that basically means the FDA are now aware of the difficulties that we face in trying to get approval for new drugs as we go into clinical trials, which means that the lens they review our clinical outcomes on is slightly different, and hopefully will help us progress drugs more smoothly through to market approval for a JM indication. We've got a number of clinical trials that we've successfully funded to look for better treatments. I'll go into some of those in a little bit more detail when we talk about the different specific drugs that we're talking about. These more often than not are repurposed drugs, so they're drugs that are already on the market, and we're just looking to see how effective they would be in the JM patient population. We've invested a tremendous amount in different research groups to advance treatments for CureJM or for JM care. This includes everything from basic research. We look at breakthrough genetics. We've looked at genomics, particularly through the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. The other thing that we've actively funded, which has been really quite exciting, is the National Centre for Advanced Translational Science, which is an offshoot of the NIH, have developed a robot-based program whereby they've isolated some muscle cells that mimic JM, and they've been successful in screening every approved drug that's on the market in the USA through that particular assay system. So you can imagine the logistics behind doing that. So we funded a fellow at NCATS that worked diligently for several years to get this assay system up and running. Did it extremely successfully, and we've got some really interesting outcomes from that. Again, I'll talk about that a little bit later when we dig into some of the research programs in more detail. And I think critically, the other thing that we've done is we've been forming new relationships with a range of biotech companies to look at how we can translate some of these drugs that are already on the market for slightly different indications, such as JIA and some other autoimmune diseases, and really try and provide some evidence that we fund programs to provide the evidence to the drug companies to impress upon them that it's actually a good idea, it's good science to actually look at developing their drugs for JM patients. And, you know, the drug companies that we're currently trying to influence, folks like Pfizer, BMS. So quite often these are fairly big major players in the drug discovery, development and marketing game. So we're actively involved with quite a number of larger pharmaceutical companies, and also some smaller ones that have got some real potential to have game-changing drugs that we're highly aligned with.
Thank you, Andrew. We'll come back to some more information on that drug development a little bit later in the program, but I'd like to turn it over now to Shannon Malloy, Director of Development and Family Support, who's going to talk a bit about some advancements that we've made, particularly in 2021 and moving into 2022. Shannon, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. And like Andrew said, tremendous progress that was made is really all about doing it for our tremendous patients. Everything we do is for the kids, the families, and the patients throughout their lives. So one of the key things that we did last year was to provide on-the-ground educational support and family support to all the families. So you might have been part of some of our town halls, some of our events, some of our Facebook groups. And funding the 4 major centers of excellence that we have across the US to deliver the highest quality of care and second opinions to patients. So this is a really important thing that we can do so that families can get on the phone with a JM expert and get a second opinion on their care. Next slide. So how do we do all of this? How do we make this tremendous research possible and the tremendous progress? It all comes down to the families. I see many of you on the phone here today that are part of making that $19 million invested in research possible. And I want to say thank you to all of you. Nearly every penny, as far as I'm aware, every gift except one of that $19 million has been from friends and family of the JM patients. So it just goes to show that everything you guys are doing is really helping make all of that progress that Andrew talked about possible. Some of the big successes that we had last year in 2021 were the Rare Experiences auction, which many of you participated in. Thank you to the Caldwell family. I know they're here on the line. That event raised $25,000, which was really quite wonderful for a first year event. Last year in the Giving Tuesday Holiday Challenge, which I know many of you were also a part of, we raised $850,000 for research. So a huge congratulations to all of you. And last year's Walk Strong Across America, $650,000 for research. So this is just a way of showing how when all of our tremendous families get involved, all of this tremendous progress is possible. So I want to say thank you to each of you for joining and making this possible. So who are the families that are supporting Cure JM and that we are supporting back? Of course, as you guys know, we do it all for the kids of any age. So throughout their lives, we want to offer support to the children, the teens, the young adults, and education to the caregivers. So that's the parents, the patients, the special friends and family. Like many rare diseases, this is only made possible by you. So just putting out a call to anyone who has any time, treasure talents that they want to share with Cure JM. If there's something you can do, chances are we can use those talents. So reach out to me, put your name in the chat. There's a lot of exciting things going on. And I'll just give a quick plug to something very exciting we have coming up. In just a matter of weeks, we'll be getting started with our 3rd annual Walk Strong Across America campaign. So this is a very exciting way that families can get involved and have a lot of fun doing it, making a difference for the special person in their life with JM. So this is really a worldwide event, but families from across the country will walk together with their friends, their family, a small group, or even just by themselves, wherever they want. You can walk around your neighborhood, around your yard, around a park in your hometown, and raise money for JM research while you're having a lot of fun. I see that we have a special guest, Christine Alderfer, president of the board of directors on, as Jim mentioned. She is also the co-chair with Karen Berman of the Walk Strong Across America. Christine, anything you want to add about this year's upcoming walk?
Sure, thanks, Shannon. We're really excited. It's hard to believe this is our 3rd walk. I'm really looking forward to it. Karen and I have been working hard, along with some of the Cure JM staff, to come up with ways that we can hit large goals to help fund this research and help fund better treatments. And one way that you can all help is by setting up a page, fundraising page, which we can help you with. You can comment in the chat, and Shannon will make note of it, and then reach out to you to get that page set up, and just spread the word. And, you know, like Shannon said, it's not a big, you're not, you know, walking in a 5K or, you know, a mini marathon or anything. It's simply, you could be walking around the block, but just to raise awareness and for our kids. And it's just a fun way that we can raise a lot of money, and hopefully this year will be the biggest success yet. So in advance, I thank you all for participating in that, and we're looking forward to seeing lots of fun pictures and the t-shirts, and just kind of getting that momentum going. And we'll be reaching out to you to see if you need any help. And in the meantime, feel free to contact Shannon or me or Karen, and we're happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Christine. That sounds like a lot of fun. I love how flexible and fun it is. You can walk anywhere. So if you have plans on July 4th, you could walk, you know, any day that you want, or you could gather your group on July 4th and walk in the morning before celebrating. So it's a really fun way to get everyone involved. So we'll be reaching out to you guys with more information. Next slide. So the second group of family members that are just so important at Cure JM is the Grandparent Council. So as Jim mentioned, Cure JM was actually founded by grandparents and parents. So since its inception, grandparents have just been an enormous part of everything that Cure JM does, from on the grounds volunteer work and fundraising to support for the research, and just getting involved with all of the talents and the time that the grandparents have. It's not an understatement to say we couldn't do it without them. And I want to say a special thank you to Randy Putt. He's the chair of our Grandparent Council, who helps the grandparents get involved in any way that they really would like to. So if there's a grandparent in your family that wants to get involved and be a volunteer or support Cure JM, you can chat, you can reach out to me or Randy, and we'll definitely get them involved. And this is just the last quick update on some upcoming things that you might hear about in 2022. So we have 3 big events every year, which are an exciting way for families to get involved. The Rare Disease Day auction, which happens on Rare Disease Day, February 28th. You can see all the information for that at curejm.org. Get registered, put some bids on. There's about 15 really great items out there that you can bid on. Vacation homes, if you'd like to do sort of a COVID-safe VRBO vacation. There's some fun jewelry, so check it out. Share it with your friends and family. Have a vacation and support a good cause while you do it. On July 4th is our Walk Strong Across America, which you heard about from Christine, co-chair of the event and president of the board of directors. So that's a really exciting event, which the whole community can participate in. And then on Giving Tuesday, which is at the end of November, that's another day where our families get involved in making research possible. So these are the 3 events we have coming up. And if you have any ideas, thoughts, want to get involved, just pop your name in the chat or reach out anytime and we'll find a way to plug you in. Back to you, Jim.
Great, thank you, Shannon. And I thought I'd touch on, especially again for our newer families, a survey that was done some years ago in terms of what our families want. I think this has not changed significantly in recent years, although we are going to be sending out a new survey here in the next 30 or 60 days to update these results and see if they've changed much, although we have updated them through the kind of emerging concerns, which I'll touch upon in just a minute. So it's pretty clear when you look at what our families want, how it aligns very much with our mission. Obviously, a cure, that's in our name. We know that a cure for JM, like a cure for any disease, is a longer term proposition. And in the meantime, we know that what we really want to achieve is getting children into remission quicker, adults into remission quicker, through better and new effective treatments. Of which Andrew is going to talk about here in a moment. This is obviously new treatments, a part of our mission, which is why it's right here as one of our top 4 initiatives, responding to, in fact, what all of you want. Predictors and triggers of flare. This has long been an area of research at the National Institute for Environmental Health Sciences at NIH. That institute is now headed by Dr. Lisa Ryder, who I think many of you know is also one of the principal investigators at our Center of Excellence at GW University, and without question, one of the top JM clinicians and clinician researchers in the United States, if not the world. We're very honored to have her and the work of that institute working on our behalf. Managing and eliminating side effects. Andrew's going to talk about a drug that's been on our radar for the last 2 or 3 years called vamorolone, which is what I think of as the anti-steroid steroid. We have lots of reason to believe that it may have all of the efficacy of prednisone with far fewer side effects, and we are optimistic that this will go into a clinical trial once approved. Once that trial design is approved by the FDA, and the initial steps of that approval are being submitted to the FDA here in the immediate future. So some of the newer things that we have added in the last couple of years around emerging concerns look at personalized medicine. Personalized medicine is really a concept that is taking more root in medical delivery each and every year, and for JMers, personalized medicine comes down to our having a better understanding of the causes of the various types of JM that our children have, and being able to match certain drug therapies with the underlying autoantibodies that kids with JM have. So we've seen this in practice as children come off of some of the earlier drugs, most particularly the prednisone and methotrexate and IVIG regimen that is often very early in treatments, and go into something that's more maintenance oriented, relating to keeping the disease in check, either by having far lower dosages of those earlier drugs, or even having some replacement drugs that are being used by clinicians off label. And then finally, we're very interested in the long-term impacts that JM have as children move into adulthood and adolescence, particularly fatigue and endurance. So we've been funding more in that area. And then I think you all are also aware of our new initiative that is being headed by Suzanne Edison to really incorporate mental health into standards of care at clinics around the country. So this in a broad sense is kind of where we're focusing a lot of our time and energy. And it is really at the heart of, I think, our most recent achievements and our likely achievements here in the next couple of years. Andrew, back to you for a little bit on the medical symposium. And oh, I'm sorry, you changed that around. Our research program followed by the medical symposium and some other updates.
Thanks, Jim. Just teasing out what Jim was just discussing about what our core aims are. We like to break it up into what can we do from a basic research perspective, fund programs that look at the real basics of the disease at a very fundamental level, at a cell level, what's happening from a genomics perspective, what environmental triggers are there, what predictors of flare. So we've been funding programs in those areas. We've been looking at, as I discussed, repurposing drugs that are already on the market and trying to see how effective they would be in the JM population. And comparing a range of different therapies as far as new treatments are concerned. And then, as we discussed, we've got 4 amazing centres of excellence, and we've also got our new clinical CureJM clinical care network, which is a range of 15 different sites across the USA that have got amazing paediatric rheumatologists that really offer the optimal treatment for JM patients, all the way from diagnosis, initial treatment, ongoing care, physical therapy, mental health counselling, just the full gambit. So we're exceptionally fortunate to have such a passionate group of doctors that work with us to offer that amazing care to our patients. And I think the core thing that we have as our foundation is we love to foster collaboration because we are such a rare disease and these kids are so comparatively rare. That means there's relatively few samples that researchers can get access to study. When you're trying to run a clinical trial, no one site can recruit enough patients to actually run an effective clinical trial to get a statistically meaningful signal. So one of the things we are passionate about is ensuring that we break down any borders that there are between different institutions, different clinicians, and get everybody working together and pulling in the one direction as a really strong team. So next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit about how we're actually doing that and what we've been doing really successfully over the last few years. So the first thing I want to focus on, we've been very fortunate to have somebody fund a fellow at NCATS for the last few years. Dr. Travis Kinder set up a wonderful cell line. So he isolated some muscle cells, and then some folks have probably heard of something called CRISPR-Cas9. So it's a way that you can actually get into a cell and edit a cell so you can actually control which pathways a cell will have upregulated and downregulated. So Travis developed what was a very close mimic of a typical JM muscle cell that has got an inflammatory response. And what he then did is he had access to the library of every approved drug in the USA, and he screened every approved drug that's currently on the market. Not only did he do that, we also got him to screen some of the drugs that were in later stage clinical trials that we thought may be active. And Travis did an amazing job over several years, and he uncovered a lot of drugs that we expected to be active in his assay, But some of the things that came up that were a little bit unexpected were things like there was 1 or 2 statins that came up as being potentially active, and a class of drugs called HDACs, or histone deacetylases. These are quite often used as cancer chemotherapeutics, but in low dose, it seems like they may have some potential in the future as far as a potential JM treatment, a better treatment for JM. So after getting those wonderful leads from NCATs, what we then decided to do is the logical thing is to go from a cell line to an animal model. So we've now funded 2 different groups that have got 2 different animal models, where the aim is that we actually take some of these drugs, we put them into an animal model to actually translate and demonstrate that in an animal model of JM, they still have good activity and they don't have any toxic side effects. So we've got a group up in Binghamton in upstate New York that's got 1 animal model, and then we've got somebody from University College of Wisconsin that's got a 2nd animal model. So we're really excited about progressing naturally those things that we funded that were successful. We want to build on that success, take them through some animal models. The ultimate aim is to then get these things into clinical trials. So I want to discuss briefly some of the success we've had from a clinical trial perspective and what we've got coming forwards through the pipeline. So some folks would probably have heard of baricitinib. This is what's called a JAK-STAT inhibitor. This was studied by Hannah Kim and Lisa Ryder at the NIH, and also associated with our GW Centre of Excellence. They did a very small 4-patient study that's been published. It did show some promising activity in 4JM patients, and Hannah and Lisa have both spoken about that in a range of international conferences. So while that trial has been completed, the other thing that has happened sort of alongside baricitinib and has just been trickling through in the background is one of the drugs that came up from NCATs as being particularly exciting was one of the newer classes, one of the newer representatives of the JAK-STAT class of drugs, something from Bristol-Myers Squibb called deucravacitinib. The foundation have been working quietly and diligently in the background to try and create some influence with some folks to try and get deucravacitinib, which is potentially better than baricitinib. We still don't know until we get into trials, but we'd like to get that into a JM trial. So this is a watch this space. We're hopeful of being able to make some announcements later in the year as to what's happening with the JAK-STAT class of drugs. Slightly different drug, so an antibody, not a JAK-STAT, abatacept. This is a drug owned by Bristol-Myers Squibb again. This went through our GW Centre of Excellence, went through 10 patients. The patients have all now had their last visit. The study's now being written up and it's being detailed. We hope that it's going to be published towards the middle of the year. And while the clinicians aren't sort of letting any cats out of the bag as to how successful or otherwise this drug was, we do think that this has got some significant promise, and we'll see the final manuscript from that hopefully in the next few months. And I think, as Jim mentioned, something that's been on our radar for a while now is a steroid replacement called vamorolone. This again came out of Binghamton University. One of our key MAB members was associated with developing this drug. This has progressed through another pediatric indication, Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, and they have been through 3 stages of clinical trial with that drug for Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. It's on its way to the FDA to try and get market approval for that indication. Fortunately, we have a wonderful relationship both with Duke University, the Duke Clinical Research Institute, and Reverogen, the company that actually owned the drug. And what we've been doing in the background for the last few months is we've been developing a clinical trial synopsis to take to the FDA to try and get the FDA's approval to start looking at this potential fantastic drug. It has all those wonderful effects that you would want from a steroid as far as dampening down patients that are really badly flaring, really decreasing all those key markers of a significant inflammation. But critically, all those side effects that we're also aware of from a normal steroid, it doesn't have any of those side effects, or certainly then much, much less so. Inhibition of growth, bone density, mood swings, weight gain, all those side effects that we're also familiar with, vamorolone doesn't have those. So again, this is a watch this space. We have been working quite hard to get this going forwards, and we're hopeful that once we get this to the FDA, we'll seek FDA approval to open a clinical trial, and we will then start looking at this in a range of DM patients and then JM patients. So it's really exciting time, and I think what I wanted to emphasize in this slide is that we've been very successful in funding some basic discovery work that's then progressing to animal models, and you can see that we've been successful in setting up a number of clinical trials. So as far as finding better treatments, this really is evidence that we really are focused on ways that we can get better treatments from doing the basic research all the way through to clinical trials. Next slide, please. I just wanted to talk briefly about, as Jim mentioned, one of our emerging concerns is how can we get better personalised treatments for each of our patients, because they are all individuals that tend to have an individual phenotype. So some of the grants that we've recently funded and that we're actively looking at, the first one is out of Bath in the UK, just emphasising that the foundation looks for the best possible researchers no matter where they're located in the world. The Bath group are the world experts on identifying new myositis-specific autoantibodies. 40% of our kids that present, they're seen as MSA negative. I think everybody acknowledges that they probably have MSAs, but we don't know what they are. Once we can identify these new MSAs, the idea is that we will be able to use those to determine a phenotype of disease to hopefully give a personalised approach from a medication perspective. The other thing that we're doing with the group at Sick Kids in Toronto is developing a biomarker. So this is something whereby we can get a routine blood sample. Once the blood sample's taken down to the lab, they can do a new assay system and they can determine how active the disease is and how well treatments are working. So this has been run by Dr. Jane McMahon and Dr. Brian Feldman up in Toronto, who are some of the most gifted mathematical-based clinicians that can really deconvolute patterns to try and develop a correlation between different biomarkers. This is really going to help us start medication when we need to start it, but critically stop it if we think the disease is getting better. So we don't undertreat patients and we don't overtreat patients. Last but not least, we've got a couple of different groups that are looking at mitochondria. So these are the little energy producing organelles in every cell, and a range of different groups have actually established that they're really intimately associated with different aspects of JDM. This includes calcinosis. So Dr. Christian Lude, who's associated with our Seattle Centre of Excellence, he's one of the key researchers up in Seattle. He's actually determined a link between these mitochondria and calcinosis. So the idea is, as he uncovers that pathway a little bit more, we may be able to develop specific personalised treatments when calcinosis is a significant factor in the disease. Next slide, please. And then one of the things that I just wanted to emphasise when we talk about fostering collaboration, every year or thereabouts, we've taken it upon ourselves to organise a virtual symposium. And the aim of this is to bring together the full gamut of clinicians and scientists that are involved in JM research, JM clinical care, translational studies, and we bring these different research groups from around the world to talk about the research that they've actually done and where they see the future as far as these research initiatives are concerned. The symposium is aimed at medical professionals, so there's a range of, we expect people from hospitals, people from basic research to enrol in the symposium. The last symposium we had over 150 global people register and attend the conference. We're hoping for at least that this year. Critically, we've got a fantastic relationship with Duke. So we co-host this symposium with Duke so that we get what are called continuing medical education credits, which means it's a very attractive conference or symposium for doctors to attend. And we're fortunate this year, we've got a couple of keynote speakers, including Brian Feldman from Canada and also Anne Reed from Duke that are going to talk on some really interesting topics. We cover absolutely everything that Jim just mentioned. So we're talking about, mental health and the impact of mental health on our patients and families. We've got somebody that's specifically addressing that transition from a pediatric rheumatologist to an adult rheumatologist. So we're exceptionally happy with the way the programs come together and how many registrants we've already got. And I think the other thing we're doing slightly different this year is because we're a patient advocacy foundation, we've got Christine is going to be doing the introduction this year. So I'm going to be taking a step back and we're going to have Christine introduce all these different medical folks that are going to talk about this research. That's really going to be, it is impactful for our JM patients and really will set the stage for ongoing research in JM. And I think I did a head count of the speakers that are actually talking. The foundation have funded 80% of them for at least one research project. So we're extremely proud of, the depth and the quality of research that we've achieved over the last few years. Next slide, please. I think it's now over to...
All right, thank you, Andrew. I'm going to run through these resolutions for 2022 very quickly because I think they really just sort of wrap up, if you will, and put a bow around some of the things that we've been talking about. Well, certainly, Andrew has mentioned, and I've been mentioning this exciting new project with the Cure JM Clinical Care Network. And really the goal there is for us to have a wide-ranging, geographically diverse excellence in all corners of the country. And that's a kind of a continuous improvement, if you will, of quality care with institutions that that are new to us and new to many of our patients. It's just, I think, incumbent upon us to support more families. And the way to do that is through the development of this clinical care network, which will be launched actually at the medical symposium on March 12th. We want to continue to strengthen our partnership with the National Institutes of Health, and particularly looking at their ability to support us in validating newer and better drugs to treat JM. One of the things that I hope you will be able to tune into is Rare Disease Day at NIH coming up on February 28th. We are presenting the afternoon of the 28th, including in those presentations is Christine Alderfer and her daughter, Catherine. And what's really kind of amazing about this in my perspective, from my perspective, is that we are a very small orphan disease. We're one of 7,000 rare diseases. And because of the hard work of our board of directors and folks who were here long before I arrived, is we have really become a bit of a poster child for NIH, which is why they're kind of featuring us as a part of their Rare Disease Day. It's truly amazing what has been accomplished by this small organization with relatively small amounts of money. Our budget is about $2 or $2.5 million a year, and in our early years was much smaller than that. So the fact that we have made this progress, I think, is all the more amazing, and a credit again, as Shannon said, to all of you for your leadership in your communities, with your family fundraisers, with Walk Strong Across America, et cetera. Again, increasing the laboratory research funding to understand those underlying causes of JM. That's the individualized treatment that Andrew was just talking about. And two things we haven't talked about a lot today, but we'll be hearing more of in the future, is reactivating our national chapter structure, which is really our leadership structure that supports families and young adults around the country. We kind of had to put that on the back burner as a result of COVID-19 after several years of rapid success since its launch in 2017. And we're very eager to reopen that as the country can safely reopen as well. And finally, bringing on 100 new family leaders who can bring their vision and passion to continue to help us drive our mission and help us become and continue to build to be one of the most successful small rare disease organizations in the country. You all have really helped us make that happen. I'm very proud. I know all of us are very proud to be associated with the success of this organization. And I want to thank all of you for really being the driver of that success with your enthusiasm, your interest, your outreach, your fundraising, and your care to help make this disease as manageable as it possibly can be for families, not just around the United States, but around the world.